A Machiavellian analysis of a Dantesque geopolitical game manipulated by a global cabal. The modern geopolitical landscape can no longer be understood through conventional narratives of diplomacy, nation-states, or ideological conflict. Instead, it must be interpreted through the lens of power dynamics rooted in deception, manipulation, and theater. At the heart of this web lies a cabal, operating through financial dynasties like the Rothschilds and Rockefellers, which pulls the strings of global powers, specifically the US, Russia, and China, while presenting an illusion of rivalry. In this Machiavellian world, morality is a pretense, and the population, distracted by media spectacles, is treated as pawns, deceived at every turn by leaders who appear to oppose each other but are, in reality, advancing the same agenda. The theater of conflict, false enemies, real collusion. Niccolò Machiavelli argued that power must often disguise itself to maintain control. Similarly, the ongoing geopolitical game between the US, Russia, and China is less a clash of opposing ideologies than a coordinated performance. Leaders like Putin, Biden, and Xi present themselves as adversaries, but behind the scenes, their policies reflect a shared alignment with the interests of a hidden elite. The cabal orchestrates this dance of hostility to maintain global instability, which serves its goals of control, expansion, and wealth extraction. Take, for instance, the alignment between Putin and Israel, which is often concealed under a guise of conflicting alliances. While the U.S. openly acknowledges AIPAC's influence over its foreign policy, Putin's close relationship with Netanyahu reveals the same hidden hand at work. Despite speculation about Putin's Jewish ancestry, the more significant factor is his geopolitical alignment with Israel's interests. His actions suggest that, like Biden and Xi, he follows directives from the same cabal, reinforcing Machiavelli's principle that power thrives through deception. The Greater Israel Project, the unfolding plan. The concept of realpolitik is essential to understanding the Greater Israel Project, rooted in the vision of Theodor Herzl. This project is not merely about Israel's security, but about territorial expansion and economic domination. The war in Gaza is better understood as a strategic maneuver, a war of convenience, rather than a spontaneous conflict. With Gaza subdued, the logical next step involves exerting control over Lebanon and securing the region's offshore gas and oil fields. In this chessboard of power, nations do not act as independent agents, but as proxies serving the larger agenda. Iran and Turkey, despite their posturing as Israel's enemies, fit perfectly within this scheme. Just as Machiavelli advocated the use of enemies to consolidate power and sow confusion, these nations' opposition is a carefully crafted illusion. Erdogan, for instance, mirrors the role of the legendary Israeli spy Eli Cohen, only with greater success, appearing to resist Israel while furthering the cabal's grand design. Iran's rhetoric serves a similar purpose, maintaining the necessary facade of conflict while cooperating beneath the surface. These seemingly opposing forces act in concert to sustain the narrative that keeps global populations distracted and controlled. The Tusa attack, a coded message of power. Recent events, such as the attack on Tusa, Turkey's premier aerospace company, offer further evidence of the cabal's influence. Official narratives blame Kurdish militants, but the real perpetrators lie within the hidden hands of the US and Israel. The timing of the attack is no coincidence. It occurred during the BRICS summit and Turkey's arms fair, where many nations opted to purchase weapons from Turkey instead of Western suppliers. This attack was not merely an act of terrorism, but a deliberate message to Turkey, warning it against challenging the established global order. The cabal's interests are served by undermining nations like Turkey whenever they threaten to deviate from its control. Turkey's growing defense industry and geopolitical pivot toward BRICS, along with its independent energy policies, are viewed as challenges to the Western-dominated system. The attack on Tusa was a tactical response, sending a clear signal: defiance will not be tolerated. As Machiavelli warned, power must assert itself decisively and ruthlessly when faced with disobedience, and the cabal is following that advice to the letter. The illusion of sovereignty, the world as a managed prison. Machiavelli understood that rulers must maintain the illusion of sovereignty to keep the masses compliant. In today's world, however, sovereignty is a facade. The global elite, seated atop a pyramid of power and wealth, manipulate governments and economies through financial institutions, corporate networks, and lobbying organizations. While ordinary citizens believe they are witnessing conflicts between nation-states, the reality is that their leaders are all serving the same masters. The Rothschilds, Rockefellers, and their proxies within the Cabal engineer these crises to consolidate their control over resources, energy markets, and strategic regions. The war in Gaza, the rise of BRICS, the conflicts involving Turkey, and even the tensions in Iran are all chapters in a carefully orchestrated play. The endgame is the expansion of influence, wealth extraction, and the eventual reshaping of global power structures in favor of the elite. As Machiavelli noted, fear is a more reliable tool of control than love. In this Dantesque world, fear of war, terrorism, and economic collapse are wielded to keep populations docile while the elite continue their unchecked descent. Conclusion: the path forward in a world of deception. Understanding the world through a Machiavellian lens reveals the grim reality behind the events unfolding around us. The leaders we trust to protect our interests, whether in Washington, Moscow, or Beijing, are not acting independently but are puppets in a grand scheme controlled by a cabal. This cabal, operating through the financial and political influence of families like the Rothschilds and Rockefellers, uses conflict and fear to maintain power and advance its agenda. In this darkened reality, the challenge for ordinary citizens is not just to awaken to the truth, but to recognize that all narratives of nationalism, rivalry, and conflict are part of a larger illusion. The only way to break free from this prison of deception is to understand the forces at play, question every narrative, and seek alliances beyond the structures controlled by the elite. As Machiavelli might suggest, in a world where deception reigns, survival depends not on trust or hope, but on knowledge, vigilance, and the ability to see beyond the masks of power. This Dantesque journey through geopolitical machinations may appear grim, but awareness is the first step toward reclaiming autonomy from the hidden architects of our world.